Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we'll be going to understand React.js from the ground up. I will explain what React is, how it's being set up, and the core concept you must know to start building real application. Let's get started. React.js is a JavaScript library used for building user interfaces, especially for building a single page applications. Instead of manipulating the DOM directly, React is component based. This means that you can build a small reusable pieces and then combine them to form a full application. It is very fast, scalable, widely to use in modern web development. Now, let's get our React setup. Just few commands, you can create React project, install the dependency, and start your development server. Once your project runs, and you will see the basic React structure ready for development. This setup gives you a clean folder structure and fast reload while coding. Let me show you how. Now, to get started, using Vite, we need to run these commands that I'll be showing on your screen, and you can just follow me through, right? So I'll be running my npm create vite.latest, and sometimes it might take some few minutes. Okay, now that we fully get our app installed, right? So let me quickly explain this folder and this directory and what it does. This is our main project CRS folder. This is our public folder. This is our node module folder, right? This node module folder is compiled, and it makes our application to work with node, right? And this our public folder. This is where we have all the images, all the files that has to be accessed publicly. That's where all of those files will be. And this src folder is where we have all our project file, the main, the asset folder, the css file for the app.jsx, the index.css, the main.jsx, the gitignore, the xlint config file, the index.html file, the package.json file, the package.json file, then we have the readme file, then we have the Vite config file. All of these files they all have their own significance, but the main part that I want us to focus is this index.html. This index.html allows us to, I told you that React is a single application, single web page, right? This index dot dot html makes it just a single page where all our JavaScript modules and all are being compiled there. As you can see that we have in our body, we have just the main.js file. That means that in our main.js, that is where all the loading now comes in. Then the where the importations comes in, the modules, the all the necessary dependencies and all. That is where all of those will now comes in. Now, as you can see that we have in our main.js, we have just this app, right? This is a component, right? Is a component that we imported into our main.jsx file. And meanwhile, let me quickly explain this extension for us. This main.jsx, it means that main.javascript extension, right? You know, on a norms we might just have main.js, which means that main.javascript file, right? So, but this means that this particular file is a component based file which represent JavaScript extension, right? So having said that, now that we already imported our app now, so now in our app, this is where all the necessary stuff that we might even need later on be be found, right? As you can see. Now let me quickly open this URL for us so that you can see what we are talking about. So anything that you now want to change now, you are meant to change it in your app.js. Please don't forget that, right? You have nothing to do with your main.js, JSX, or either ways that may be. Some it may be main.js, it may be main.jsx, right? So but your focus is on app.js. So anything that you want to change should be within app.js, right? You can have component inside components, you can have child parent and child components, etc., and on and on. But you just know that anything that you are changing it only inside app.js. So you can go ahead to open that URL, that localhost 5173, copy it and paste it in your browser. One of the beautiful thing about VS Code is that you can you can easily open your browser with your VS Code, because VS Code has an inbuilt browser. And to open your inbuilt VS Code browser, just hold your keyboard, Ctrl Shift and P, right? It will open up a panel for you where that will open up. As you can see, then you select your simple browser show, right? Now then input that URL, httpx http, right? Okay, let me just copy it because of my time. As you can see, this is my browser that I have, that is inbuilt inside my VS Code. I can just easily share the screen and drag this guy over here so that it can split my screen for me. So now let's proceed from here. Now that we already have both our VS Code IDE and also at the other hand we have our browser that is open, then let's proceed from there. Let me quickly tell you about what JSX file mean, right? This extension .jsx. Now, JSX, what JSX means, like I said, it means that JavaScript extension, right? Writing HTML in JavaScript. That's just the basic explanation, right? But to furthermore, JSX is what makes React powerful, and it's easily to understand, and it allows you to write HTML-like syntax directly inside your JavaScript, even though it looks like HTML, right? JSX is actually JavaScript behind the scene, right? And it can be embedded in variables, expressions, and logic inside curly braces, right? And Java.jsx also helps you to virtualize your UI clearly while keeping your logic and layout in one place, right? So now, let me give you a very good example of what I'm talking about. JSX. JSX. Okay, in continuation with what I was telling you about JSX file, I want to tell you about the rules of JSX file, right? Number one, it must return one parent element. It must return one parent element. And two, it uses class name instead of class. You know, instead of class in our CSX, right? In our normal contemporary HTML and CSS, instead of class, we use class name. And lastly, JavaScript goes inside a curly braces. A curly braces. JavaScript goes inside a curly braces. Now, let me give you a very good example of that. Now, all of this now, I will clear all of this out and I will give you a very fundamental way to go about it. So let's clear this together. Let's clear it together. So let me remove this also, and all of this, let me remove them, right? So I think we should be good to go. So I'll remove this also. So now that we've removed all of those now you know I told you about that GSS return only one parent element. This is the parent element that I'm talking about, function app, right? And you are returning this. You are returning all of this. And what that means, this one, it means that this is a fragment. But initially, it meant to be that, okay, you are returning just one element. For instance, now you are returning maybe H1, right? For instance, you are returning H1 and you are saying that, okay, hello world, hello world, my React, my React class, my React class, my React class. So this is returning just one what? One element. So by the time I refresh it, and as you can see, it shows. That means it's returning only one parent element. And for we to have multiple elements now, we will have to wrap it with one parent element, right? So instead of me using H1 now, so I can just easily use maybe div, right? Div, and by the time I refresh it, so it's still the same. As you can see, I have my div, hello world, my React class. But on a real sense, you are meant to use what we call fragments, right? A fragment. So a fragment makes it easy for you to have just one parent element. For instance, as it is now, this is an example of what I'm talking about as a parent, just one um, parent element. And this parent element that I'm using is called fragment, right? So either ways, if you now want to use multiple elements now, maybe H1 or something, right? H1, as you can see, H1. So now that you know this one element, right? H1. Now let's assume that you want to have another one as H2, and you now want to say um welcome, welcome, right? So that means that you now have two elements now, but it's wrapped with one parent element, which is that fragment. This fragment here, right, is open here and is closed here. So that's a very typical example of what I'm talking about. Now, let's have a variable. right? A variable in form of JavaScript, right? So now let me just have my variable here. Let me have my variable here. Let me have variable my name, right? My name equals to a string Oluwatobiloba. In your own case, you can easily just go ahead and put your name there, OluwatobilobaGp, right? So I have my name. Sorry, we have uh, constant my name, right? So I have my name, then I terminate it here. Now that I have my name as declared, right? Then I'll now say, oh, welcome Oluwatobi. I said that JavaScript goes inside a curly braces. As you can see, we have a curly braces here, right? Open and close. Now, let's talk about the class name, right? Let me wrap my JavaScript, my name, into span. Let me wrap it inside a span. Let me wrap it inside the span. Now that I've wrapped it inside a span, now let me give it a class name. A class name. Let me say name. Now that I've given it a name, now let me go ahead to my JavaScript app.css and let me say dot name. Then I have my color, and let me just choose aqua. Now if I save it, let me save this also. As you can see, the color of my name has changed. That is a very good example of the implementation I'm talking about as the class name instead of class. Now, I want to explain what component is for us. What is a component in JavaScript, right? What is a component and how important component is in JavaScript? A component can simply just be a JavaScript function that returns a JSX, that returns JSX. That is what component is. What that means is that a component, right, is a JavaScript function that return JavaScript extension. That's just it, right? And a component in React is simply JavaScript function that return JSX. Each component represents a pieces of user interface. Each of those components, it represents one or a piece by piece or small user interface, small pieces of user interface. Instead of building the whole thing in one file, React allows us to split those UI into small reusable components. And a very good example of that, let me quickly show you how to set up your a component. Now to go ahead and to for us to have a component, you create a folder inside your SRC, a folder called components, components, right? Component, because we have more than one component, more than one component. Now let's go ahead and create a JSX file inside each of those components. Now let me quickly just open or create an header an header JSX file, and you will notice that my naming have capital letter as the first letter there. And the reason why I have capital letter as the first letter is because for you to have a component in your app, and so that it can make a difference between a component and an element. What I mean by that is that, for instance, now you might have something like this as an input, something like input, right? As you can see. Now, for you now to have input as a component, as a real component itself, it will be like this: input, right? Input. So the difference between this and this is that one is a component and one is an element. This one is an element, while this one is an element. This one is a component. So that is how to make a difference in React, so that you won't have a confusion by the time you are working on a real life stuff. So let me just clear all of this together. Now let me return a function in this my file now. I'll be using a snippet now, rfce rfc. Right? What made it possible for me to quickly have that um, snippet is what I called an extension that I already added on my VS Code. And if you don't have it, you can quickly just add it in yours. So, and you can quickly add the extension. The extension is called React Snippets, React, React Snippets, React Snippets. And but you can have the general one. You can use this guy. You can use ES7 React, either of the two. The one I this React code snippet, or React Redux and React Native snippets. You can use either of this one or this one, and you are good to go. So having said that, let me go back to my header. Now that I have my header here, so now instead for me now to have hello world, my React class inside my App.js, the main one, so I can just easily add it to my component here called header. So by the time I save it, and now that I've already created it, but let me quickly, I don't need this for now. I can just remove that. So okay, so let me quickly import it inside my app. And for me to import it, I can easily import it by doing import header, right? So, and in here, instead of my h1 whatever, so I can just quickly remove it and save that. Okay, so as you can see, I have hello world, my React class. But for me to have it big, let me quickly just insert this inside h1. But then let me put a fragment. Let me add a fragment here. Let me add a fragment. So instead of div, let me use h1, and we should be cool. As you can see, can you see that? So now let me create another one, or before I want you to create one. Let me quickly give you that as an exercise. Create a component, right, and call the component button. Call the component button and import it in your app. I'll give you a few minutes to quickly do that. Now, I want to believe that you must have done that, right? And but if you were unable to do that, let me quickly show you how to do that again. So, firstly, you create a new file call it button, right? Button.jsx, right? Call it button.jsx, and then use your snippet like the way I showed you earlier on. So you call it button, and inside your button you have your fragment as usual, right? Fragments, and this div will now be button, and this button you can just call it click me. Call it click me, and after you've done that, you can come here and import it. Once you import it, should be good to go. Button, so under my h2, so let me just add the components there. As you can see, this is the button here. As you can see, click me, right? So then you now have another component. I told you that components are this all of these components now that I've made, the header, the button. I want to have a reusable component now, a reusable component will will use it more than one or two times, right? An example of such component is a card. I'll be making a card whereby that card will be used multiple times, will be used more than once. So let me go ahead and create a card dot JXX, right? Follow the same pattern, the snippet, and remove this guy. Don't need it. So let's add our snippet, a fragment. So now in this card, I'll be using more than just one element here, right? So I'll be using div, and I'll also be using h3 and h2. So let me use this card as h3. Let me see h3. Okay. So let me cut this. Come here. Let me say my card, right? This is my card, right? So, and in this my card, I want to have another element here, right? So let me have another element. Let me call it paragraph. paragraph. So on this my paragraph, let me say this is a reusable reusable right, a reusable card component, reusable card components. Now the same way we imported ours, so let's quickly import this also in our app.js. So to do that, let me quickly import it and say um, card card. So by the time I save it, as you can see, I have my card. This is a reusable component. So I haven't done that. Now this is where everything comes together. As you can see, we have this header component, we have an element, I have a component card, I have a button component, right? So let me impute this, let me remove this element and add it inside my card. Let me remove this also. That's a variable that we are using to in that's the variable that we use for our name, right? So let's proceed and everything should be fine. Okay, good. Where's this one coming from? Okay, as we can see, this is our header, right? Our hello world, my React class, then the card, which is from my card, hello world, reusable component. Then we have the button. The button is the last. And this is where everything comes together. We import the multiple components and they are rendered inside the app component, right? They are wrapped and rendered inside app component. Now, this is a very good example of React application that are built using composing components like blocks and so on and so forth, right? Now, the browser preview it. It previews the header, it previews the card, it previews the button, it previews the multiple components that is rendering at once. Each component renders independently, but together they form a complete user interface, right? This structure makes your app scalable. It makes it scalable and it is very easy to maintain, right? You can maintain it. And one of the key rules of component is that you have your component must start with a capital letter, which I already showed you before, right? One component per responsibility, right? Components can be reused and components can contain other components. That means that you can have component inside a component, right? Always remember these rules when you are working with React components. This will help your code clean and professional. Now, in our next class now, next we'll be talking about props and component communication, how the props communicate and how each component, you know, interacts together, right? Now, I want you to like this video, to subscribe it, to subscribe. I want you to like this video, subscribe, and share to your friends. Right? Thank you.